Good afternoon, and welcome to a special pre-holiday edition of Between the Pillars, the Fisher Library's video podcast series where we get to meet Fisher librarians, we get to meet other staff, we get to meet our collections. We wanted to have this special pre-holiday one for a couple of reasons. First, because our theme is going to be talking about leaves, research leaves, since I'm just about to embark on one, and my colleague, who's our guest today, Liz Ridolfo, fairly recently came back from a leave. She was on leave from July 2021 to the end of June 2022. So we thought we'd talk about we're talking about Liz's research leave. When I come back next in the summer and in the fall, we could talk about my research leave. So it's all very exciting. So welcome, Liz. Thank you for being a guest. As I said, we did want to do something just before the holidays. So we have some other little special holiday treats as well to talk about. So Liz, let's first talk about your research leave. We're very lucky as librarians, first of all, we should say, because we're part of the University of Toronto Faculty Association. And by the way, I should also mention, we're in the same room. Which is the first Between the Pillars we've done in the same room since early days of the pandemic. So we feel a little more confident these days, and we wanted to do something in the same room. So as I said, we're very fortunate to be part of UTFA, where we get to we get to do research leaves. So maybe you can kind of give us sort of the thought process when you were about to initiate your research project. You know, did you have a certain subject area you wanted to look at? A collection at the Fisher, maybe? Maybe you could just kind of fill us in exactly on some of the genesis of that research project.
I definitely had a few ideas in the long term that I wanted to work on, and many of those were sort of interrupted or were not possible due to the pandemic, but I still wanted to take advantage and focus more deeply on something. So, you know, I work with the Cookery collections, and I catalog many of the items, but I don't, other than, you know, exhibition work, don't get the chance to really focus deeply and spend a lot of time with any of the material.
None of us do, unfortunately. That's kind of one of the sad things about some of the many of the things that are coming through the Fisher. You know, we get to maybe look at the title page and briefly look at the contents, but we don't really get to really delve deep into the materials.
Only when we're teaching or doing exhibition curation do we get to actually focus more deeply on individual items, because mainly we're focusing on access. So the research leave is a good opportunity to take something that's passed through my hands and make more connections with material in other institutions and sort of see it as part of the bigger picture.
So tell us then exactly what your research leave was all about. Then what were you doing?
So the main part of it ended up being working on a book chapter related to a culinary manuscript, a handwritten cookbook that we have in our collections that was given to us by Mary Williamson. So it's an Irish cookbook written by an Irish Quaker woman called Mary Leadbeater, who lived from 1758 to 1826. And we're very fortunate to know who it belonged to, because in many cases the manuscript cookbooks in our collection are unattributed. So we can guess where the people who worked on them were from, but we don't necessarily know who they were. Or if they have names, they might be difficult to track down because their names might be quite common. So in this case, we have a woman who is a prominent author, a prominent Irish Quaker personality and author. Not only that, but she has an extensive archive of materials, journals, and correspondence scattered across more than 6 institutions internationally. So it was really a good opportunity to make some connections between what she'd written in her cookbook and what her life was like.
Do we know how Mary acquired the manuscript?
Mary got the manuscript from a member of the family. So it was in the family up until it was given to Mary, and shortly after it was given to Mary, she gave it to us. So it stayed in the family for quite a long time. So even if her name was not in the book, we would have that sort of provenance that the family themselves knew who it belonged to and had a family tree that we could look at to sort of trace it back to the family in Ireland.
Why don't we take a look at it? You've brought it to us. So I use the document camera. There we are.
Good. So it's got a beautiful green vellum binding. A lot of what's interesting about it came out of looking at what was in it and then comparing it with the thousands of pages of correspondence and journals that she wrote from 1769 to 1826. So she was an avid journaler, and so she's attributed many of these recipes to named people, and often in these manuscripts we can't tell, unless the named person is someone who actually wrote a cookbook that we can trace, and it was from a printed cookbook, we can't actually tell that these people were members of their community,
Right.
Or what their relationships were. But it was something like 60 or 70% of the names that I found in this manuscript were actually people that she corresponded with, or people that I could determine lived in her community. So I've opened it to this page because there's a little tiny Greek inscription up here.
Right.
It's just one of the little features that made me more curious about Mary.
Okay.
So some of the things that make the manuscript unique is having these, see, little short form versions of recipes here that show that, you know, someone at some point wanted to make this recipe and wanted to make it a little bit easier for themselves to work on.
Right. Okay.
I also opened it here to a page where we see that someone has added a tiny little manicule
Right.
on top of the
Okay.
knitting instructions for a man's nightcap. So the combination of some of the actual physical features of the manuscript and the possibility of learning more about her made me want to work on this during my leave. There's also an amount of the correspondence has been digitized by University of California, Santa Barbara.
Right.
So I was able to access some of it from home without having to travel, because when I started my leave, people were definitely still not traveling.
Right.
So people at other institutions kindly, gave me access to letters, and there were some digitized images of the journals online. And one of our Fisher pandemic projects was actually manuscript transcription, and without that, I think it would have been a lot harder for me to do this project, because once staff here had transcribed and made lists of all of the recipes in some of our manuscripts, it made it a lot easier for me to search the names and the recipes, and
Right.
made my work quite a bit easier.
Is that transcription available online? Is the manuscript, first of all, has that been digitized?
The manuscript's been digitized, and it's available on our digital collections website.
Okay.
The
We'll post the link to that
Yes.
in the notes.
The transcriptions that were done need some editing and cleanup, but they'll be linked from the digitized manuscripts when we've eventually finished cleaning them up.
So anything surprising then that came out of the research of this particular manuscript and its author?
Her journals actually showed her, discussed her daily activities, making butter, making bread, having conversations in the kitchen about what she was cooking, harvesting fruits and vegetables, and so we actually can get the sense that she had an active part in the cookery of her household.
Right.
She was also she also made medicinal remedies. Her aunt taught her how to make many remedies. So she was a healer in her community, and
Right.
she offered remedies to some people who could not access or afford medication. She even tried to get her remedy for the bite of a mad dog published. So
Okay.
I learned that in the correspondence, but the publishers gently refused, and
Right.
having the idea that people might not take appropriate medical action if they thought that they had something that would cure the bite of a mad dog, even though it was not proven.
So in terms of publication, then, so you're going to be publishing something on this on the manuscript?
Yeah.
When can we expect it?
I'm not sure of the date yet, but it's part of a part of a book called Early Modern Manuscript Recipe Books
Okay.
Across Europe.
Okay.
And so it'll be a book chapter in that. And I think it's the University of Amsterdam Press that's going to be putting it out.
Very exciting.
I'm very excited.
But that's not the only thing I think you did on your leave, because I know you've got an upcoming exhibition.
Yes, I have several upcoming exhibitions.
And these leaves are, when I took my first research leave, it was to do the research into the Allen Ginsberg exhibition. So they're really perfect opportunities to do that, to do research and exhibition.
So in autumn 2023, I have an exhibition on the juvenile drama, which is our toy theater collection, an extremely large toy theater collection of theaters and sheets
Right.
that we have here at the Fisher. And I have also an upcoming exhibition on women travelers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working on putting together a seminar on culinary collections that we're going to be offering as part of our Fisher Summer Seminar this summer.
Great. Do you have an idea for your next research leave?
After I get through these exhibitions, I'll start thinking about that.
Okay. So yes, I mean I'll be doing my research leave on something we talked about on the last podcast on the private press. So that's going to be an exciting time for me to be able to really focus in on the material. There's so much material that has come through the library in the last 4 to 5 years, and be able to, as you say, just kind of sit and really ruminate with a lot of this material that we don't often get the chance to in our everyday day-to-day existence at work. So that's kind of fun.
There's going to be a lot of interview components.
And I'm going to be doing some interviews, interviewing some of the current private press practitioners. So that's going to be that's a nice kind of primary source component, I think, of the leave itself.
Not the kind of thing that you can do while you're in the library.
Exactly. So the next 6 months are going to be pretty exciting and fun for me. Since we are in the holidays, we did want to show a few holiday items, because I think you were asked recently to pull some things
yes,
from the
around
collection.
this time of year, I'm usually asked to, or one of us is usually asked to pull some material, and so I thought I would show you some of the things that I had here. So we're looking at some naughty Santa Clauses today.
Right.
This Santa comes from a cigarette package. So we see him there. It's not quite clear if he's smoking or if this is the smoke from a chimney, but he does have a bag full of cigarettes.
Right.
This is either a Chinese or Japanese cigarette package, and this scrapbook was assembled sometime in the 1930s, so most of the items in here are probably from around that period.
Do we know how we purchased that? How we acquired that?
We did purchase it.
Okay.
It was purchased, I think, in 2015 or 2016, and it fits well with some of our other collections that show the history of kind of advertising graphics.
Yeah, including
the beer labels.
So the beer labels has always been one of our favorite things favorite collections to show. Maybe you could just talk a little bit generally about that beer label collection.
Yeah, the beer label collection was part of a collection that belonged to Lawrence Shirk, that he donated to the library. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but he gave us, a very large collection of beer labels, some of the oldest breweries no longer in existence that were in different provinces. And also brewery stationery, which shows images of the factory, it shows ordering and other sorts of information. He also had a lot of realia, which went to other institutions, I think Niagara College, perhaps.
Okay, right.
Where there's a brewery
There's
program.
a brewery, yeah, there is,
yeah. So, but we have the labels, and they're amazing to see, the trends in graphic design, trends in people's tastes, and how things were advertised. There are temperance beers, and there are what they call invalid beers, which were sort of nutritious beers for those who were unwell.
And do they go back to the 19th century? Right?
Yeah, I think some of them do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So what do we have here?
So this is a chaise. So Santa's looking quite rosy and jolly in here, and it's kind of got a little bit of a golden tint. So this is a chaise Winnipeg brewery.
Surely from the cold, not from the beer itself.
Surely. This one is not a beer label, but this is a case label, and Santa has a case in his hand here.
Right.
So
a
this
2-4.
is White Seal beer from St. Boniface, Manitoba, and this is Season's Greeting. So this might have adorned the side of a case that you might take home with you for the holidays.
Right. Amazing.
Yeah.
So not that we're advocating Santa was a beer drinker, but I think after a long day of 24 hours of traveling the globe, I think maybe he's deserving of a beer, of an IPA, an IPA when he gets back to the North Pole. So anyways, we did want to show you just a couple of fun items we have. I mean, we're asked every year to pull up different things, holiday, Christmas themes, for the holiday season. So there's
just a little taste of it for the festive season.
There's no short supply. Next year we'll show something also Christmas themed that has nothing to do with beer and Santa.
Yes.
So thank you, Liz, for the special pre-holiday podcast, video podcast. Liz is actually going to be taking over the hosting duties for Between the Pillars over the next 6 months while I'm on leave, and it's only we used to do bi-weekly. We're going to be doing monthly for the next little while, simply because it's a lot more manageable, being short-staffed, at least down one person at the Fishers. So look for Liz to have some interesting guests on starting hopefully in January. And I do apologize that we haven't had a podcast for a while. It's been a strange term for us. As I said, we've been short-staffed, we've been very busy. It's been hard to find the time. But hopefully we'll go back to a more manageable monthly schedule. I just also want to just say one personal note. Whenever guests appear on the show, I always tell people, pretend you're speaking to my parents, because my parents are the ideal audience for the video podcast, and they faithfully watched every episode. And I want to dedicate this episode to my father, who actually died just last month. One of the reasons why the podcast took a bit of a hiatus. He always loved the Christmas things, so he would have loved. He liked beer too, so he would have loved to see this episode of pairing Santa with some beers. So again, I just want to dedicate this episode to my father. Have a happy holidays and a wonderful new year. The Fisher will be open again if you're watching this prior to the holidays. Open again on, we're going to be the reading room is going to be closed until January 9th, but we hope to see you there. We're going to have a new exhibition at the end of January as well, called the Sister Arts. So a lot to look forward to in the upcoming year. So again, thank you, Liz.
Thank you, John.
And we will see everybody in the new year.